Okay, Mark, looks like we are live once
Good to
again.
go. All right.
Awesome. How are you today?
I'm great.
How is beautiful America?
It's still here another week.
I
I mean, since
watch,
last week, the stock market's doing crazy stuff. You just every week is something else. I'm
I
waiting
have,
for the aliens to land.
I haven't, well, apparently there are 120 days off or 100 something days off until they release everything, isn't it?
Who knows?
It's, yeah, I haven't watched much news this week, but
You're better off for it.
I've actually been curious about a little bit of Bitcoin action. So I've been watching a little bit of Bitcoin stuff, which is always interesting. And yeah, just hearing you talk about the share market, it seems there's a fair few people, even a lot of corporate, interested in Bitcoin.
They
So
want to move. They want to move out of the dollar. That's why they don't
yeah,
trust. They don't trust the valuation.
I was watching Ray Dalio
Mm.
and a couple other people talk about how, the printing of money and that sort of thing that's going on. Could be interesting times for the US coming
Well,
ahead.
interesting time for the world because everything's tied to the freaking U.S. dollar.
True,
You know,
true,
it's
true.
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to get out of this without massive inflation.
Maybe all those preppers were right. We should be underground.
Well, I know that barter is alive and well. We don't need cash. We can go back to the way the Indians did it.
Yeah,
Back to the indigenous people,
yeah,
right?
true.
Trading shells and trinkets.
But we're not here to talk about that today. Here to talk about the power of no, not the power of now, but the power of no. We don't have Eckhart Tolle as a special guest today. It's only us. But I wanted to talk about this in the context of being able to use a no to increase your own worth in sales conversations and using the power of no to protect your own time, because people pleasing is a huge problem out there. And people pleasing usually leads to you saying yes, when you actually want to be saying no. And that takes away your time, and that also takes away your value, can remove your value. So any opening thoughts on that one, Mark?
Yeah. So initially, when you said the power of no, my mind, because I'm essentially a positive person, went to KNOW, the power of no, like knowledge.
Sure.
So I don't want to sidetrack this conversation because it's incredibly powerful, but make a note of that for a future episode.
We will.
The power of no, KNOW.
Yep, will do.
So I'm absolutely 100% on the same page with you that no, NO, the negative, is one of the most incredibly powerful tools that we have to control our destiny.
Yeah, I know from personally in my life, that not being able to say no has got me into a lot of trouble. And not so much always trouble, but it's led me down paths that I haven't wanted to go down. And I was speaking to someone this morning about the power of the little no. And it's often the little no that turns into a gigantic no that has to be said later on.
Mm.
And that's the one that normally tips you off off your push bike.
Mm.
And it's it's in the day to day that that things go astray, and we start saying little yeses that get us into trouble. In business, I find little yeses not just send us down the wrong path, but they devalue us as well. The little yes of, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that for you. Yeah, I can take care of that. And instead of adding value, it removes value and removes your time in the same instance. It's a tricky little conundrum that I think everyone falls into at some stage.
It's the living definition of scope creep. You know,
Mm.
an
Yeah.
incremental step over the line. Oh, it wasn't that big. I can accommodate that. And then it doesn't stop
It'll,
there. It goes to the next step.
it'll just be 5 minutes. It'll just take me 5 minutes. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a
You got a minute? You got a minute for me? Got a minute for me?
No, I don't. It's interesting. And the classic example is I see this with clients where I say, well, how about you just hire someone to take care of all that little admin work that you're doing? And they say, no, it doesn't take much of my time. And yet it's taking a huge chunk of their time if you were to measure that over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, it would be weeks out of your year that you're doing these little tasks, which is actually devaluing you. And you have to see it that way. People say, oh no, it's going to take too long to train someone. It's going to cost too much to hire someone. And yet they devalue themselves. Instead of earning $1,000 an hour, they're now earning $340 an hour because they're doing all this admin task at the same time.
You know, it's much worse than that.
Yeah, very true. But that was just one thing.
Because as soon as you get interrupted with one of those little tasks where you can do it just in a jiffy, that sounds great. But if you were involved in a mental train of thought when you were interrupted, it's going to take you a half an hour to re-engage, if you can even re-engage. And as you get older in life, it's sometimes, many times, impossible to re-engage where you were because you just are thinking in too many different directions and you cannot realign those thoughts. So that's one good thing about this COVID scenario is that I've had a lot of time to be able to think for myself without a lot of interruptions. I just turn off the phone, or I just turn off the Zoom, or I turn it off and just stay focused for something for half an hour to an hour. And I find that in time management, and I don't want to go down this road with time management, but the thing that's worked the best for me is a process called the Pomodoro Process. And the Pomodoro Process is where you typically set your time limit for 20 to 40 minutes and you work uninterrupted for 20 to 40 minutes. And then you either take a 10-minute or 20-minute break before you re-engage in something else for 40 minutes. I do 40 minutes because I tend to get really deep into thought and, analysis, and I don't want to be interrupted during that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't use that myself, but I find, like, for me personally, like, I work from home, so it's quite quiet. I have my own little office here. I'm kind of tucked away from the distractions. But in an office scenario or in a busy scenario where, even if it's the coffee shop scenario, or in a work environment with offices and that sort of thing, you do have to shut people out. You do have to be able to say no. And even if that no is, no, you can't talk to me for the next 40 minutes or an hour, I'm locked away. People, I would say one of the biggest problems along with the social media and all this sort of stuff in today's world is people pleasing. There's a lot of people out there that are good at this, that can say no and, kind of push people away nicely. I mean that. But there are a lot of people that can't say no, and they're constantly loading themselves up, and they're giving them the excuse is, I'm good at multitasking, or I'm better under pressure, or whatever, even down to what else would I be doing? I've got to stay busy to keep my job. It's a bit of a, it's a very slippery slope, actually. One yes can lead to a life of misery.
Or a no can lead to a life of misery. And I think one of the things that I've gleaned through experiences over the years, the gazillion, that's a B-A-G, the gazillion, interruptions that have happened. At one point, I was at the wit's end, and I started thinking to myself at that point, this has got to stop. I'm too accessible, but you want to be accessible, but under boundaries, with boundaries in place. And the boundaries in place that I put into place was to give those around me the tools to be able to make that interruption the least possible interruption, and to give them the tools to say, if I go to Mark, he's going to ask me these 3 questions. And if I can't answer those 3 questions, then he's going to get really mad at me because I'm wasting his time. Well, guess what? Those 3 questions almost always answer the reason why they were coming to me in the first place.
Sure. And that well, presumes that people that are actually coming to you are coming to you with something serious or something worthy of your time.
But to them it is.
Yeah.
But
And,
not to me.
well, no, but if they get past those 3 questions.
Yeah, then that's someplace we can grow. And
yeah.
that's a legitimate interruption. The other thing is you can set boundaries. If it can't wait more than an hour, the building better be on fire. Right?
Exactly.
Right? Or an earthquake or something, right?
And that's
some type of an emergency.
Yeah. And in this day and age, it seems that, with email and messaging and all the rest of them, if we're not answering something in 10 seconds, we're ignoring people. And it's, there's that kind of train of thought where we're taught to, just answer email after 12 o'clock or between 12 and 1, or, do those sorts of things. And it's not the way most people operate on a day-to-day basis. I know I don't. I mean, I operate differently. I answer my email in the morning and probably in the afternoon. But most people are sitting in front of their computers all day long. So if an email pops up, and this is probably the biggest piece of it, they're operating from reaction. And going straight into that. They're unable to say no. They're operating from reaction. They can't say no to themselves,
right?
Because they think they're going to disappoint someone. And again, operating from reaction, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, where not having a strategy in place, not having a plan in place for drama, will drag you off course every single time.
This myth of multitasking, that's another story for us to go deep into for another episode.
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest absolute obsessive pet peeves. Anybody that thinks that they can multitask is writing a recipe for procrastination and delay, because all you end up with is 10 projects that are partially done.
Well, and even if they are completed, I find that sort of work is average at best.
At best. Because you can't maintain a consistent, train of thought. You can't think through it.
No.
It's all about being interrupted. So it's going to be superficial for sure.
Yeah. It's, I mean, the whole time management thing, that is a whole rabbit warren to dive down, but it's, again, it was popularized, and yet that is essentially saying you have to say yes to everyone.
Well, and I think, one of the ways that I've dealt with this in my practice because I'm still not good at it yet. That's why they call it a practice, right? That I could never understand why they called attorneys practicing, because you pay them so doggone much. They shouldn't be practicing. They should have it down by
They
now.
should, they should be professionals by that stage.
Exactly, exactly. But in my endeavors, um, gosh, now I went down the wrong hole on that one. Forgot the train of thought. It's we were talking about
just that time management thing and how it drags you away.
the time management. So here's what I found in my own business. As a way to differentiate myself and as a way to determine how serious this is for my clients, I give them the option to buy an access package. And they buy an access package for 3 months. And there's 3 access package levels. There's the $1,000 a month, the $2,000 a month, and the $4,000 a month access package. And what that allows you is, if it's an entry level package, the 1,000, all 3 packages have unlimited access, but you can only access 15 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, or an hour at a time, depending on where you are.
Sure.
And if somebody's going to be investing at $4,000 a month, I guarantee you that I'll respond immediately when they call, and that also gives you different response times as well. So it's like, if it's $1,000 access, it's within, I think, 2 hours or 4 hours. And if it's $2,000 access, it's within an hour, and the $4,000 access will be within the hour if I'm available. And it's up to me to block my calendar and make sure that I'm, showing as busy if I'm engaged with somebody else.
Sure.
I've found that people that are at the higher access levels, you'd think that they would just be all over you, being needy and going for you. That has not been my experience.
No.
They need clarity, and there may be a burst of high intensity over a 1 or 2 or 3 day period, but then they'll leave you alone. And that's why I only allow them to engage for 3 months at that level. But I also make it a requirement that they renew 30 days ahead. Otherwise, they'll lose their spot. And I tell them, look, I'm a very busy person, and if your spot goes, I can't guarantee there'll be somebody there, because there's 4 people waiting for that spot at the entry level. There's 2 people waiting for that spot at the mid level, and there's 1 person that's in line for that at the high level. High level gets first access, and once that happens, you're out.
Yeah. It's been the same for me over the years of just, it's quite funny that the more people pay, and I have clients kind of in the $100,000 range, the more people pay, the less they annoy me.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger the problem, or the bigger value problem they have. So for me to spend time with one of my high-end clients, they have a larger value problem that they're dealing with, and the value of fixing that problem is multiplied 10, 20, 30x. So no, they're not as needy, but what they do require is of incredible importance. And that's where the value and time of saying yes and no matters. For me to be able to be available for one of my high-end clients, it's highly valuable. It's not reactionary, and it becomes very strategic. And that's where your value comes in. For me to say no to one of my lower end clients, or to just wait that extra time until I respond, I know that the value of the question they're going to ask, or that they may be asking, is not going to be of the same value as the high-end client.
There's other qualifiers that we can put on that to give guidance to our clients. So you can say, if this isn't $1,000 problem, it can wait. If this is a $10,000 problem, then we need to get after it pretty quick. If it's a $100,000 problem, the house is on fire, right? So you can literally give them parameters so they can make a decision on what it is. And to your point, and I'm absolutely in alignment again, as usual with you, that is those very high value problems with the very high value clients. Those are the things that we are the best at solving because we have such a broad range of experience that we can literally provide multiple perspectives on that problem to help our clients find clarity, to come to clarity on it. They need different points of view. And for us, the more complicated it becomes, the more opportunity there is to provide clarity and simplification. That's high value. That's high value.
Yeah. I want to go dive back a bit and go back down to the lower end, well, not so much the lower end, but the smaller conversations that we have on a day-to-day basis, that the smaller yeses that multiply into those bigger yeses that lead us down the wrong path. It's often in our, like we were talking about the scope creep, where you just say yes to one little thing, you say yes to another because you feel obliged, and next thing you know, you've got a whole day's worth of work ahead of you because you wanted to be the nice guy.
So I'm going to pull out one of my all-time favorite resources. It's got a gold sticker on the back, right? So I've read this thing 6 times at least.
Sure.
This is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's an absolute essential book. And in Never Split the Difference, Chris is or was the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. And he would do terrorist negotiations. And his premise was that when you're negotiating for someone's life, you can't split the difference. Right? So it's like how to negotiate to the ultimate end without having to compromise. And in that, one of the key premise of the strategy is to go for the no. Because when we go for the no, in other words, we're literally expecting or we're asking a question with the expectation that they're going to say no. That gives us the door, the opportunity for us to explore and to go deeper. Why? What about that is not acceptable to you? How are we going to make this work if that's not acceptable? Now you're moving from being an adversary to being a collaborator. And that first step towards collaboration is the first step towards coming to yes.
Getting the no actually allows you to come to their side of the table.
Absolutely. There used to be one of the most famous negotiating books that was ever written is called Getting to Yes. And then that was followed a few years later with Start with No.
Right.
And I absolutely believe with starting with no. Because once you start with no, you remove the resistance because they've already blocked you.
Yeah.
So they can't block you anymore at that point. So it's like there's all kinds of different explorations that we can do that will go much deeper to a greater level of understanding. Because if they say no, then I'm going to say, well, help me understand what are the parts here that are objectionable? Is it delivery? Is it price? Is it content? What's the outcome that we're looking for? All of those things have just now added elements into that negotiation or into that conversation.
And I was going to say, and it's funny because we're talking about saying no. So on the flip side, you saying no allows them to come closer to you.
Exactly.
It allows them to speak this, like it gives them permission for them to sell their reason to get a yes, sell whatever they're selling. It could be, let's go for coffee, or it could be, let's do $100,000 deal. It doesn't matter. It's like, it gives them the opportunity, and some people will take offense, but it gives them the opportunity to say, look, the coffee's really good at the local store. they make it, it's handcrafted, it's hand rolled, it's whatever it might be. And it gives them an opportunity. Well, it gives you an opportunity to learn more.
Exactly. I'm glad that you picked up on that, because what it is a tremendous psychological sidestep. Because if we're in a situation where they're trying to get something from us, and we're soliciting a no from them, or we say no back to them, now they've moved from me trying to convince them to them trying to convince me it's worth my time to work with them.
Yeah.
And that's an exploration of what is this worth to you?
Yeah.
What is this worth to you?
I just want to clarify, clean that up a little. It's like if someone is selling something, or, if someone's trying to come on board as a client, say we're selling something, we go to approach someone, they actually come to us and say, look, we've got this company, we've got this idea, we want your help on it. And you say no, then they really have to sell themselves to you.
Right.
If they've come to you and you give them a no, it automatically, instantly increases your value.
Takes the power away from them.
And puts them in a position where they have to really sell themselves to you for them to give you money, which is very powerful. And it's a subtle thing, but it's very powerful, done well.
And it's not a manipulative move.
No, it shouldn't be used like that. Not
at all. And I had this happen earlier this morning on a call. I had a $4 million company call me today, was referred and said, we want to work with you. First thing was, what's the cost to work with you? And I said, well, it's free. And they said, what? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know, and I'm not going to charge you anything for it. And they said, well, how do you stay in business? And I said, because when you realize how long it's going to take you to accomplish the steps that you need, you're going to need guidance, and you're going to want to accelerate the results. And that's what I do, is I accelerate the outcome. So it might take you 2 years on your own, or it might take you 3 months if you work with me. So it's up to you. The choice is up to you. What's the value of your time? So they said, well, we think we'll work on this on our own. I go, great. Let me send you an assessment so you can do it. And just now, as we were talking, I get this assessment back, and it says, oh my God, I had no idea.
And they never do.
Can we talk on Friday at 11? So it's like, great. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. But it wasn't adversarial on my part. In fact, I was completely open and was helpful. I'm going to give you everything that you need to know. You're going to have to fill the details in yourself. You're going to have to do the research. I'm going to tell you where to go to get the research. I'll tell you the books. I'll tell you the authors. I'll tell you who you need to talk to. And then you're going to have to decide how long it's going to take and how you're going to fit that into your already busy schedule.
Yeah.
So you're framing it in a way that you become the expert facilitator. And, to achieve business clarity, to paraphrase someone I know, to achieve that clarity, you have to understand what the moving parts are that are in there. And we don't need to discount those. In fact, we need to reinforce the right steps done in the right order and the right way to get the results quickly. And if you do it, you can do it really fast. But if you bumble your way through on your own, it's like the first time you learn how to cook a complicated recipe. You're intimidated, it's scary, and chances are you're going to end up going out to dinner that night anyway.
Yeah, so it's funny. As you know, I've been sending out sort of lumpy mail and doing some direct mail stuff. And I got a response back about a week ago before the lumpy mail had hit the desk. And I just reached out to them on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm going to be sending out this parcel, take a look. And the response was along the lines of, if you're going to make a pitch, don't bother. And my response to that was, well, there's never any pitch from this side. And that's the way like saying no allows you to be in that position. There never should be any pitch from this side. And if,
That's the resistance. There's the expectation that the pitch is going to come.
yeah,
And when I stay right at the very beginning, hey, I'd love to get on a call with you. This is no pitch. I have nothing to sell. Absolutely nothing. In fact, you can't buy anything on this call. By saying that, I've completely taken their power away. And it's like, wow, what now? What is this all about? And it opens up to have a really good discussion. And then we use the power of no and guide the conversation. And this is a learned skill. I mean, this is a learned, structured approach that you evolve over time. After you've done, 200 or 300 of these calls,
yeah.
you begin to recognize the patterns within those calls, and it becomes very relaxed and not pressured in any way.
Yeah. It's, yeah, I was like, when we're in sales conversations, it's very tempting, and you see a lot online these days. It's very tempting where people want to make the sale on the first go and they want to get the yes. Like, it's all about, you've got to get the yes, you've got to get the yes, we've got to get multiple yeses. When in fact, it's better off to get some no's so that you can overcome objections versus
Get to the objection.
Versus getting the fake yes, 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 and then
Right.
getting no at the end.
Right. Those no's to get to the objection. I don't believe in objections. I believe in questions for more information.
Sure. Yeah. And that's
really so that's what I'm after, is I want to get to the root of the question that needs to be answered.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people in sales, I know, like, that's the thing. Online these days, it's being taught a lot. You have to get yeses all the way through. You've got to get the first yes. You've got to get the second yes. And really, in my book, I kind of say it should be just an easygoing conversation. It shouldn't be a sales pitch or some harsh conversation. Whereas I think that's taught a lot. And that's probably a very old school method. I was actually just watching The Wolf of Wall Street yesterday. It's that kind of approach that's kind of birthed that idea that it's got to be a high pressure. You've got to get a yes. You've got to go for the yes. It's killer instinct type stuff. Whereas I think aiming for the no, and even being able to give a no and say, like, you're not actually a good fit for what I do, will it gives people permission to ask questions of you, and it also gives you permission to ask deeper questions of them and their business. And as I said, it's an opening, like a no is an opening of the doorway versus a shutting of the doorway. And I think a lot of people think of it that way. They think of it as a closing down.
There's a couple of points I'd like to add on to that. The belief that sales is for me to win, you have to lose mentality is old school. We're in the business that we're in to help people. I'm in the business of solving problems. I get paid to solve big problems. I get paid to solve big problems quickly. So bring me your problem. Bring me all the issue that you've got, and let's ask the questions that you are too scared or unknowing to even ask. If you don't know what you don't know, you can't get the right answer. So asking hard questions that make the counterpart kind of uneasy or even squirm a little bit, you're forcing them to face the reality of their fear.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that in an empathetic way, where you're trying to help them to come to clarity, that's why we're doing this, is we're trying to get them to come to clarity so that they can move out of their state of chaos and pain to a more stable, and meaningful place. And that's not manipulative. That's not pressure.
No,
It's
it it shouldn't, no, and it shouldn't be. It should be a, as I said, an open, friendly, like informative, and actually a bit of a back and forth discussion. Like it should be a discussion. It's not a one-way
collaboration.
conversation.
It's a collaboration.
Yeah. It like
Because if you move in the sales process from the neuroscience, because I'm a big neuroscience guy, right? We start every discussion from positions of defensive resistance. This guy's going to pitch me, right? So it's like, well, it's coming. So I'm hiding back. I'm super defensive. And the next step is I've got to diffuse that. I've got to diffuse it by saying, well, you're probably thinking I'm going to pitch you with something. I'm going to probably, hard sell you with some kind of deal. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not me. We're not even talking about it. There's nothing to sell here. There's no pitch coming. So right then that barrier just went down, and they're kind of, okay, what do you got? What do they're just kind of,
they're cute. They get curious.
they get curious, and they become cautiously curious.
Yeah.
And we have to respond to that cautiously curious foray by reinforcing the safety of the conversation. So you move from curious to cautiously investigative to cautiously collaborative to collectively collaborative. And that's the part where you close the sale. That's the part at which they realize, hey, you can really help me with this.
And that's the thing. It's like starting with a no up front puts you in a powerful position, and it increases your worth. It increases your perceived knowledge. And it's everyone, I think it's trained into us that a no is a negative. Whereas a no is more, as I put it, like an opening of the door. It's an opportunity to have a much more open conversation done in the correct way, like especially leading with a sales conversation, or a conversation where there's a desire to sell some sort of service. Leading with the no is a good way to start that conversation. As you said, it removes their defenses. It makes them curious. It's a door opener. And I think a lot of people think of no as a very negative thing, but I think they're wanting to get to the end too quickly. And that normally ends up with a no if you're rushing to the end of the conversation.
It ends up being a very unsatisfactory solution for both parties.
Yeah.
Because the rushing into a conversation like that, we don't go deep enough, and we're not looking far enough into the future to the consequences of the action that we're dealing with, and whether it's going to actually deliver the solution that we want. As soon as the sales guy says, yeah, we can do that, is that transactional for the moment? Or are you considering the ramifications into the future? I love it when somebody wants a quick answer with a quick, low end, oh, it won't take that much time. It's this. And I can say, well, I could do that, but I'm not. And the reason I'm not is because I'm concerned about where you're going to be a month down the road. If you did that, what would a month down the road look like for you? Now, all of a sudden, I've taken him out of the moment and put him into the future, and he's not thinking in the future. I refer to this as adolescent thinking. It's like, it's like the classic parent, saying, well, I suppose if all your friends said jump off the cliff, you'd jump off the cliff, right? It's like, well, all the other guys were doing it. It seemed okay to me because everybody else was doing it. Yeah. Well, I don't care about how stupid everybody else is. You got a good head on your shoulders. I'm teaching you how to think about the consequences of what you're doing. And that moves you from adolescent, spontaneous, spur of the moment, transactional engagement to more meaningful.
And that's actually a great point for the day-to-day, the little yeses that we say yes to, that we often aren't thinking about the longer term ramifications of that. In
Oh, yes.
business and in business and life and relationships and all the rest of it, it's like the little yeses that add up to that big no that we have to end up saying. They catch up with us, and it's often because we're like saying yes in the moment versus saying no because of the longer term. It's a bit of a tricky web, and you have to be very aware and present mind to be able to navigate the waters, especially with people very close to you or very charismatic people, very convincing people, that sort of thing, like very energetic and vibrant people. It takes presence of mind to listen to what they're saying and to pause for a moment, to not always just give the yes, yes, yes. I know I've been caught there myself many times throughout life, and it's often those charismatic people that are able to get across a point in a really exciting or thrilling or whatever it might be way that touches a nerve inside you that gets an automatic, almost an automatic response versus a thought through response.
This is a great point that you bring up, James, because I spend quite a bit of time in trying to understand personality types. And there's many different personality tests that are out there. I'm partial to the Myers-Briggs type inventory, the MBTI, 16personalities.com if you want to take it for free.
Yep.
And I'm a very, very strong NT, which is an analyst, intuitive thinking. So I'm constantly thinking about something and I think of a solution and it immediately comes back around to what does this mean? What are the outcomes? And you've heard me say before that we got to take the labels off of anything that happens. It's only an event, and 2 of the 3 things that can happen are bad. So I'm thinking of this, it just runs in my mind all the time. So I can take a thought and do 20 or 30 iterations in a matter of minutes because that's the way I think. And if you've got someone that is a sensing, feeling individual, they're perceiving the world based on their senses and what's observational around them and the feelings that they're feeling. And these kinds of individuals have to talk their way through what's happening. They have to interpret all of this sensory input, and they don't make sense of it on their own. They have to do it in the presence of others. And an analyst and that type of a sensing, feeling, perceiving person together are really a challenge because they're exactly opposites of each other. And I find myself through many less than desirable outcomes of conversations, having to force myself to just shut up and not talk, and force myself to listen more closely to the words the other person is using to try and understand how they arrived at that position and what's missing. And my role is not to solve the problem at that point. My role is to guide them to clarity.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I'm a big INTJ and like architect, strategist.
Right.
And for me, I'm much the same. Like if someone's talking, I'm quiet. And for me, I'm processing. Okay, what are the key pieces in all of this? Where's
Right.
the straight path? Where's the simplest, where's the biggest leverage? What's the simplest factors in this? And yeah, for me, same thing. Those creative types that are bouncing ideas off everyone, I'm always sitting back and analyzing and strategizing. And it's interesting, like I won't jump in with a yes or a no. I pause, and like those creative types often don't like that. They want an instant answer. They want something, they want a quick response. They want feedback. And it's interesting to sit in on those conversations where they want your feedback immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm willing to walk away for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 days and then come back to that conversation. When I've thought it through, I've thought through the possibilities, the strategies, every kind of option. And for me, I have to say, like, saying no in that situation, it does become tough because they want a yes. And I think, like you say, there's so many different character types in the world that this is it's a big problem as well. We don't explain our character types up front. We don't go, oh, by the way, I need to think everything through. And the other person's like, no, I want an instant answer. We just get into a conversation. And then those conversations either blow up or they go badly or they go well, more so depending on what sort of character types we are versus the topic at hand, which can also be difficult. So it's, again, coming back to this point of the power of no, it's knowing when to say no, as well as having the presence of mind to be able to say yes in the right scenario.
And the power to say no there, my experience has been that if I say no to the quick answer, the response is going to be, well, what's so complicated about this? And my response is, wow, there's a lot going on here. And the transactional individuals say, what do you mean? It's like the issue's pretty simple.
That's,
Then I'll raise 4 or 5 perspectives that they've never considered. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? And then all of a sudden I've established my authority and my expertise and my cautious, reasoned analysis. And that allows me to back off and determine whether this is an engagement that I want to do, whether I can be effective with, and whether it will be in the best interest of that particular client.
Yeah. Often you get a question that's a quick question, but people aren't thinking through the longer term. Like, as I said, I'm very strategic. So I'm always thinking through the longer term move. Like, what is that? Right. What is that one little yes going to eventuate into in 3 months' time or 6 months' time or 3 years' time?
Right, right.
It's, and as I said, coming back to character types, we all have different character types, and you've got to be able to, give a no, to pause the conversation sometimes just to open the door to find out more information.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting nearly at the top of the hour there, Mark. So we will wrap this up. Any final words on no? No. I'm going to leave
pass that out.
I think that's enough. I think, people listening to this, what I guess what I'd finally like to say is you have the permission to say no. It's a pause in the conversation. It doesn't need to be a finality. It's a pause more than a final kind of, a full stop on the end of a conversation or a communication or a connection. So treat it as a pause.
Like so many things in life, it's all how you look at it.
Very true. All right, Mark, we will talk again next week, and next week will be a day earlier. So look forward to it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.